Hey folks, how's it going? So we're looking at question number 14. It's the last question of this chapter, and it's a proof. What we want to do is we want to prove that when as x tends to zero, the limit of a function is L. Then if you multiply that with the non-zero constant, the argument, the limit doesn't change. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. So okay, the first thing I want you to look at is intuitively it kind of makes sense, right? What we're saying here is that okay, as the argument goes arbitrarily close to zero, the function it tends to a value L, right? So something that's very very small, it's almost zero, right? It doesn't matter if you multiply it with a constant, right? You can always make it even smaller and even closer to zero by the same factor, and negate any influence that this constant is having, right? What I'm trying to say is that a times x, it's as good as saying x, right? Because both of them are arbitrarily close to zero, right? So, one way to illustrate that is, well, think about this, right? Limit x goes to zero, f of x, f of x equal to L. It doesn't really make a difference if I rename the argument, right? It doesn't matter as long, should be y, right? It doesn't matter as long as, we're putting in the same function, right? They're both tending to zero, and the limit is a property of the function, right? Not the name of the argument. So what I'm trying to show you when I do that is, imagine this, right? Let y equal a times x, right? So I'm defining like a new ad hoc function in a sense. So we have y, right? So what happens to y as x tends to zero, right? Limit x tends to zero, y equals uh yeah limit x tends to zero, ax, right? And a is just a constant, and x is arbitrarily close to zero. So what is that? That is just zero, right? So basically, as x tends to zero, y tends to zero, right? So in that case, you can replace the argument in this function with y, right? This means limit x tends to zero, f a of x equals limit x tends to zero, f of y. Y tends to zero, right? So we replace all instances of x with basically just y, right? And now notice, the form of this limit, it's not really different from this limit, right? They're the same thing, right? I can just, rename y as x, because again, the name of the argument doesn't really matter, right? So, which is why limit of f of y is y tends to zero, which is the same as limit of f of ax as x tends to zero. It's the same as this thing, so it's just L. Okay, I hope that makes sense, right? What I'm basically trying to say is that it's